Week 3 of Eagles training camp took off today, with some surprise standouts starting to steal the spotlight. Plus, here where the Birds might actually have the next Danny Woodhead in their backfield, and one receiver who's taking even more reps away from a starter. Oh, and Quinyon Mitchell went one-on-one against DeVonta Smith for the first time, plus a surprise linebacker standout and another interception-free day from QB1. I'm Thomas Mott. This is the Thomas Mott Show. Now, the Eagle players themselves might have had Friday and Saturday off, but a lot still went down over the weekend, starting with the Hall of Fame enshrinement ceremony, which saw a brand new class of inductees immortalized in Canton, Ohio. And while I thought Andre Johnson was probably the bright spot, I couldn't help but remember the greatest Hall of Fame intro in probably recent memory. Now, also honored in Ohio this weekend was friend of the show Merrill Reese, who accepted the coveted Pete Rozelle Radio Television Award for his outstanding work as the voice of the Birds for over 47 years. And it wasn't just his peers who recognized Reese. He got to break down the end of practice huddle at training camp earlier this week and spoke directly to the Birds' best players.
This is going to be a very, very special year. I'm not retiring. I hope to do this forever, but this is going to be another Super Bowl year. So it's an honor to be here, to stand in front of you, all of you. You're great guys. Go Birds!
Go Birds!
Now, we finally got some Birds mic'd up practice footage featuring Jalen Hurts over the weekend, which showed off his strong, obviously vocal leadership, which the media seems to think doesn't exist, but also gave us this great interaction between Hurts and Saquon. Listen to this.
It'd be great. Yes, sir. Hey, you think you can? Really? Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. You got some shit you're gonna worry about, but you have to check yourself. Yeah. You're either gonna pray or you're gonna worry. You can't do both. God got it. God know I work too. Shouldn't be to fear when you already put the work in. I come ready.
Now, in terms of roster moves over the weekend, the Eagles waived tight end McCown Castles and claimed tight end Kevin Folst from the Jets. Also minor, but at least worth mentioning today, were all the injuries, including Mekhi Becton out with an illness, Paris Campbell dealing with a groin injury, Mekhi Gardner's got a hamstring, and even Eli Ricks also out with said illness. Now, none of these actually sound very serious, but of course, all worth noting. Philadelphia, though, they just finished up their first of 4 straight practices today, which will culminate in their first preseason game on the road against Baltimore this Friday evening. Now, anytime Nick Sirianni speaks to the media, it's always worth kind of listening to see which players he actually mentions by name. It's kind of sort of an indicator on who the coaching staff thinks has been impressing over the past couple of weeks. Let's start with running back Will Shipley, who has spent the past couple of days actually mixing in with both the 1s and 2s during 7-on-7s and 11-on-11s, and had a very impressive debut at the link during Eagles open practice. Now, Shipley is, of course, making plays. That's why he's moving up in the depth chart. So far, though, he's been pretty hard to ignore, according to his head coach, Nick Sirianni.
Yeah, Will, we thought very highly of Will coming out and the things that he could do. He obviously had a really outstanding spring. He started off really good as far as the in the fall camp, and as the pads come on, we'll keep getting more and more information. As that goes. He plays big. I think. I think he has. He plays. Like, and when you look at him, he's built. Right? His lower body's really built. He really. He's there. I keep saying it to our coaches. Like, there's things about him that remind me of Danny Woodhead. Just the style of his body. Now, Danny was a little shorter, I think, but I think they're just the way they're kind of built remind me of each other.
Jeez, I mean, if the Eagles running back 3 actually has a Danny Woodhead-like year, let's just say opposing defenses are going to have their hands full for a very, very long time. Now, the other player mentioned was linebacker Zack Baun, who, stop me if you heard this, continues to kind of be a massive surprise at linebacker that everyone keeps raving about, as he's all but locked up Nakobe Dean's starting spot.
And then go back to, Bo, your question. I wanted to mention this guy, another new addition to our team that I think brings an element of toughness with the way he plays, with his motor, with the way he strikes blocks, is Zack Baun. And it shows not only in his, on the defensive side, but it also shows during special teams. Like, this guy is a tough dude that plays with great detail and great passion for this game with physicality.
For a guy whose entire career up to this point has kind of just been a special teams player and a role-playing pass rusher, he must really be turning heads to continue to get raved about from all of his coaches, including Sirianni today. Now, of course, as a reminder, if you didn't see my shows the past couple of days, 60K subs, when we hit it, sign Brian Westbrook jersey going to one of you guys, so hit the like button. Let me know where you'd put this in your house down below in the comments section. Also, while we're at it, the NFL has officially opened up voting for its annual Fan of the Year competition, and I'm going to try to win as the official Eagles Fan of the Year in 2024. All you have to do is go to the NFL Fan of the Year page on NFL.com and nominate me. It takes like 2 minutes. It's super short. I would greatly appreciate it. And all you really need is my email and my date of birth, which is down below in my description box, and then just answer a couple of questions and vote officially for me. The winner gets to represent the Philadelphia Eagles at the Super Bowl. You get 2 tickets, and you also go ahead and get a chance to win the overall NFL Fan of the Year, which would be absolutely massive for this channel, and I just love to represent the Philadelphia Eagles on your behalf. Let me know in the comment section if you do take the time to go and nominate me today. Again, I would greatly appreciate it, and I think we have a chance to really win this thing. Now, in terms of the report from practice today, it was a big day for the less popular names really making a push to earn their roster spot. Let's start with the depth, though. Isaiah Rodgers once again started at cornerback, officially breaking his starting cornerback tie with Keely Ringo. Quinyon Mitchell ran yet again with the ones in the slot nickel position, and Zack Baun, we mentioned him earlier, ran with Devin White to lead the backers yet again. There's still a lot of training camp left, preseason games coming up. The depth chart is not locked up yet, but Isaiah Rodgers, Quinyon Mitchell, Zack Baun, those are the key battles happening throughout the Eagles' overall defensive roster. I think they're definitely leading right now and are probably going to win their respective jobs. Once practice started, though, it was the 2 receivers filling in for the injured Paris Campbell who continued to shine. Britton Covey making a couple of solid catches when lined up with the first teamers, and of course the unicorn and maybe fan favorite Johnny Wilson getting more first team reps and really making his presence felt. This guy's just oozing confidence, telling reporters after practice, quote, got the playbook down and got comfortable with the routes, and now it's like I can just go out there and fly. I could play fast, not much thinking. That was a big thing for me. Wilson's easily my top guy to watch for the first preseason game. Like, if he shows out in an actual game, he's going to be not only a lock for the roster, that's obvious, but his role might be a lot bigger than any of us would have thought in year 1. Oh, and don't just take my word for that. DeVonta Smith echoed that during his press conference today.
He's a big guy, has a huge catch radius, and he's young, but he's learning fast. And I think at being an older guy now, just trying to, bring him along, bring everybody along, all the young guys, Anais, all those guys, bringing them along and, trying to show them the right way to do things.
Now, speaking of the top wide receivers, A.J. Brown and Smitty, they continue to dominate as they have been all training camp long, with Smitty catching the lone touchdown throw from Jalen Hurts in 11-on-11s, and A.J. Brown beating Isaiah Rodgers for a score during a red zone situation. Also, apparently today was the first real one-on-one rep between Quinyon Mitchell and DeVonta Smith. Kind of odd it's taking this long, but still, Smitty apparently won the rep, but told reporters he lost the trash-talking battle.
So today was the first day I actually went against him. And, I got open, I caught the ball, and he told me my route was trash. So I'm like, I like it, though. I like it. He's a great guy. I like what I'm seeing. I like to see him, he's moving around a lot, playing inside, going outside. So the versatility is there, but, it's fun playing against him.
Overall, another great day for the offense. At this rate, you just kind of assume Jalen Hurts played well, and what do you know? 15 of 19, 1 touchdown, and yet again, 0 interceptions. And like me, I think Sirianni is starting to run out of ways he can actually praise his quarterback one as week 3 of training camp is officially underway.
Yeah, he's done an outstanding job. He continues to lead, through the way he works. He continues to lead through his communication with his teammates and bringing them along. He continues to lead by, grabbing one of his teammates and making them better based off of his play and the things that he's seen. So he's been awesome on the field with the things that you can see, and he's been awesome off the field with the things you can't see. And that's just Jalen continuing to develop as a player in all aspects. And, man, I'm excited for him to continue to grow as a player and be the best football player he can possibly be. He's had an outstanding start.
Now, 2 surprise names that looked really good today. How about Jeremiah Trotter Jr., who had another great practice and even got some more starting reps with the ones at linebacker? He's another guy I'm going to watch very, very closely on Friday's preseason game. We also had a surprise showing from friend of the show, Moro Ojomo, getting to the backfield reportedly all day long and even coming up with a sack of Kenny Pickett. I think Ojomo is pushing to make this roster. I think he's probably going to make this roster. I loved his press conference today, though, where he raved about just how great it is to be a defensive tackle in Vic Fangios' defense, but also gave a lot of credit to watching and learning behind Jalen Carter.
I think Jalen is a brilliant football player. I think that Jalen Carter has tremendous football IQ, whether it's set someone up with power here and then I go to quickness, or he sees the lean of the offensive lineman. Jalen Carter has some of the best football IQ I've been around.
Still, though, it feels like the offense continues to dominate, and that was the case today. So, to get the actual report from training camp today and from the past couple of days, I sat down with Brandon Lee Gowton, the managing editor of Bleeding Green Nation, a reporter actually at Eagles practice, to give me the full rundown of what's been going on.
Yeah, the offense had a really efficient performance. I mean, I think they had 4 or 5 scoring drives. They were looking pretty good, and this was probably their strongest practice, especially since earlier in camp. Jalen Hurts specifically, it was incredibly sharp for the most part. So, I thought that was an encouraging thing. I'm sure Hurts wanted to go out and shine in front of the fans, and he did.
What do you make of the Jalen Hurts? I'm not going to call it progress because Jalen Hurts has been a fantastic quarterback his entire career in Philadelphia, but we've talked about this on previous shows. Minicamp was not good. Minicamp was full of interceptions. It was Jalen Hurts maybe at his worst in terms of practice, and yet, 2 months later, he's dicing up the Eagles' defense? Are you as surprised as everybody else is that he's this confident in a brand new system with Kellen Moore?
Yeah, I mean, they're really, for all the Eagles quarterbacks, there wasn't an interception until Kenny Pickett threw one at the end of practice. So all the quarterbacks, have been good at not turning the ball over, which is a stark contrast from what we saw in those spring practices. I think you have to give some of the defensive backs credit. In the spring, they were making plays and looking good. Not that they aren't now, but I think, they were just playing at a really high level back then. And Hurts was adjusting, I think, clearly to a new offense. And that's fine. And that's why we always had the caveat of, hey, this isn't panic level 10 out of 10 right now. It is concerning I always said if it continued over into training camp, then we're going to have a problem here. But I always said that if he comes into training camp and he crushes it, then you can kind of just leave those spring practices behind and not really worry about them at all.
I want to switch gears and ask about Johnny Wilson because I feel like Philadelphia has always tried, at least the past 5, 6, 7 years. Find me a giant wide receiver. Convert this tight end. Convert this former quarterback. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. We're going to get a massive receiver to be their jump ball guy, and it's never worked out. And I really thought when they brought in Johnny Wilson in the draft, it was going to be, rinse and repeat. So far, it seems like, especially the open practice, he ran with the ones. He's getting a really good chance to win this job, or at least win the job, get a lot of, actual reps during the regular season. Give me your overall take from Johnny Wilson, not just from Friday's, or I should say Thursday's open practice, but from his training camp so far.
Yeah, it's multiple days now where Johnny Wilson has been repping at, the first team. So at wide receiver 3, it's not exclusively him. And I don't think that's kind of the vision there. I think it might be more of a rotation, at least as it looks right now at that position. Guys with different skill sets who can do different things. And obviously Johnny Wilson has a unique skill set and with how tall he is. And again, hasn't had that team drill success just quite yet, as much as I think he stood out in the one-on-one periods, especially when the Eagles were doing that in the red zone earlier this week. Looked really good in that setting, and actually drew praise from Jalen Hurts too, who worked out with Johnny Wilson in the offseason. And the fact that Jalen was willing to throw to Johnny Wilson with a fade pass, I think that was a little too far out in front on Thursday night at the link. That shows a lot to me. I always talk about, the fact that Jalen Hurts has that trust and is willing to throw to a player like that. A rookie, a day 3 rookie, drafted in the 6th round, that says a lot. And I think that's an encouraging sign for his outlook. Obviously, we're going to have to see the results come next. But the fact that he's getting these chances seems like a good opportunity. And by contrast, you look at Ainias Smith, who was drafted before Johnny Wilson. He is not getting those opportunities.
You mentioned Ainias Smith. I was going to ask about the kind of loser of the wide receiver group right now. I've heard nothing about him. The only Ainias Smith thing I have seen the first 2 weeks was a tweet from you saying he's done nothing and basically a pretty bad camp. Can you elaborate on that so far?
Yeah, I don't want to, I'm trying to be fair here because he's a rookie. He's coming off the injury that he had, which has kind of limited his ability to even participate in the spring practices. So it could be still behind the 8 ball a little bit here. Could be that once, he gets some more practice time under his belt and, gets into those preseason games, he kind of turns things around. I've seen that happen for players before. But so far, it's been a tough go for him in terms of his hands have been a big issue, not only catching the ball, but also fielding the ball as a punt returner. There have been multiple muffed punts by him in practice. So, yeah, I look back at, and I'm not saying he's a 1-for-1 for this player, but Shelton Gibson back in the day, he had a brutal training camp. He still made the team and ultimately kind of was a special teams player and contributed to a team that won the Super Bowl. So there's still hope for Ainias Smith by all means, but certainly not off to a great start.
Where's your hope level for Nakobe Dean? I think Kenny Gainwell had a nice play on Nakobe Dean during Thursday's open practice. A lot of people caught that on video. He's been mixing in and out with the ones, but it feels like it's been more Zack Baun than Nakobe Dean. I asked this last week, another week into the Eagles training camp. Where are you at on Nakobe Dean?
I can buy Nakobe Dean, the role player, a guy who can maybe be like a 2-down linebacker. He looks good against the run. He had a good blitz on Thursday night. But in coverage, I'm just not seeing it there. I worry about Nakobe Dean in coverage. In case in point, Kenny Gainwell beat him for a touchdown with a wheel route on Thursday night, in addition to the first play that Kenny Gainwell made against Nakobe Dean, where he basically just broke his ankles. So, yeah, I'm not really buying Nakobe Dean out in space as much as I am him being able to be more helpful in the box.
Mekhi Becton obviously has been starting at right guard so far with Tyler Steen being out, and yet Steen, throughout entire OTAs and minicamp, was going to be the guy. It really felt like Jeff Stoutland gave his seal of approval. We're going to go with Tyler Steen unless something were to change. Steen is now out. He might be out a little longer than people expected. Is he kind of a big loser in terms of the injury and not getting his real chance to steal that or really hold on to that right tackle job or right guard job? Do you see Becton at this point winning it with week 1, 3 days away at this point?
Yeah, I think if Tyler Steen's able to return to practice, let's say on Sunday, that's when the Eagles are back at practice next, I think then he only missed 3 practices, and that's not the biggest deal in the world. I think you can kind of recover from that. Mekhi Becton has done some nice things. He had a really good run block on Moro Ojomo, I believe it was, who he just kind of like shoved out of the way. And you can see how he's massive and he can use his size to his advantage in that regard. But he's also had some pretty tough reps. And look, Jalen Carter's awesome. So maybe that's just part of it, is that no one's blocking Jalen Carter. But he's had some pretty rough reps, especially in pass protection against Jalen Carter. So I think it's certainly not like Mekhi Becton is running away with the job to me by any means. So yeah, we'll see if Steen can get back here. If he can get back here pretty soon, I still think he's in a good spot to at least start the season with that job. But if he's out for, a week or 2 more, then yeah, that's where Becton kind of gets more of a footing.
We've been talking at the end of every single training camp week so far the past couple of weeks, and I've been focusing in on a lot of the positives so far during Eagles training camp, and you probably noticed by now I'm asking more who are the losers, and again, they're not losers, but people that might not actually win the job that we thought that they were going to. Cornerback doesn't feel like there's a big loser right now. I mean, it was Isaiah Rodgers to start, and then Ringo ran off with the starters for a couple of days. Rodgers then started with the first teamers on Thursday night in the open practice. Is there a cornerback that is maybe dropping in terms of their stock right now as we approach that first preseason game?
I don't think Keely Ringo has looked bad by any means, but I also just don't think he's looked as good as Isaiah Rodgers, who has now taken the very first set of first team reps on defense 2 days in a row and 3 total to match Keely Ringo's 3 there. So, it was interesting. Like, okay, day 1, it's Rodgers. And then the next 3 days were Ringo. Okay, maybe Ringo is running away with this thing. All of a sudden, Rodgers makes some good plays, and now he's back. And now it'll be interesting to see on day 7 who kind of breaks that 3-3 tie there. I'm going to guess it's Rodgers, and they keep leaning into him. I think he deserves to start right now. He's looking like the Eagles' best cornerback option on the outside. But then also, Quinyon Mitchell, too. Like, as I've said before, even if Quinyon doesn't have that CB2 job by week 1, which is, I think, incredibly possible and on the table, I still expect him to be on the field in some capacity. And I think you're seeing that where the Eagles are trying to mix him in as a nickel corner or a dime cornerback. Like, and Keely Ringo, by contrast, like if he's not starting at cornerback too, he's not going to have that kind of probably sub-package role the way Quinyon would. So I guess, again, by kind of like by default, by no means of struggling or anything, I just don't think Keely has looked quite as good as Isaiah Rodgers and Quinyon Mitchell.
You mentioned Quinyon Mitchell there. It's interesting that you say that maybe it's not off the table. If he continues to ball out during preseason and training camp, could be the cornerback 2 starter. I know you are leaning Rodgers, and I think most people would. But is it kind of a feeling that it's just a matter of time, whether it's week 4 or week 12 or whatever during the season, that Quinyon is kind of gonna get a lot more starting reps? Is he trending in that direction?
I think so far, yeah. I mean, what he's done against A.J. Brown in 1-on-1 is really impressive. And look, you have to replicate that in team drills. Jalen Reagor was an awesome 1-on-1 player, but would be invisible when the team drills came around. So, he has to add it all together and piece that there and prove himself to the coaching staff. But yeah, I think Quinyon Mitchell is on a positive trajectory. As you said, again, I'm still leaning Isaiah Rodgers overall at the starting outside corner, but I think Quinyon will have some kind of role in this defense in some kind of capacity.
Mentioned at the top 50,000-ish, Eagle fans were watching the open practice on Thursday, and they saw Jalen Hurts ball out and throw 5 touchdowns. And I saw a lot of comments on my recap show on Friday saying, oh my goodness, like the Eagle defense, it's looking a little rough. Like we keep hearing how great the Eagle offense has been. Give me your overall take as someone who's been at every single practice so far. Has this just been fantastic offense, or has it really been a mixture of great offense and bad defense? Assure some of us who might be worried that Fangio's defense hasn't quite figured things out just yet.
Yeah, I can't recall a lot of coverage bust. So it's not like, this defense doesn't even know what they're doing. They're not on the same page, and they look incredibly sloppy. I don't think that's been the issue. I think they've operated at a pretty acceptable level. I think a lot of the times when the offense is having success, it's just an even better play by them, an even better throw or catch or whatever, and that's going to happen. And look, these practice settings typically favor the offense because there's no true pass rush. Obviously,
right.
If the defender gets close to Jalen Hurts, they'll blow it dead sometimes and call it a sack. And look, we've seen that too. We've seen the defensive line, especially these before Thursday's practice at the link, 2 days in a row there, where Hurts didn't look quite as good. It was in no small part to the defensive line getting a lot of pressure on him. So, there have been encouraging signs from the defense, specifically from the pass rush, that I think is something you can hang your hat on.
When preseason rolls around, less than 5 days from now on Friday night against the Baltimore Ravens, how do you see the rotation going, right? None of the starters are going to play, but does Quinyon Mitchell play? Does Isaiah Rodgers play? Does Keely Ringo play? Does James Bradbury? I mean, I'm just curious your thoughts on, we don't know yet, obviously, what you expect to see in Friday's preseason opener against the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's one certainly that Nick Sirianni is avoiding when he was asked on Thursday night. And it's kind of a weird schedule coming up here with training camp because the Eagles are not practicing. We'll walk through on Friday, and then on Saturday they're just off before returning to action on Sunday. That's a kind of a rare 2-day gap without a practice that they haven't had so far, and I don't think we'll have again, at least for a while. And then it's 4 straight days of practice, which again is not something else they've really done. I think last year they never had more than 2, so they're gonna have a 4-day stretch leading up to one off day and then the preseason game. So, I wonder if the plan is to, go really hard this week. And that's why we won't see some of the starters on Friday night against the Ravens next week, is because they'll have that work kind of built in before that game. But I don't know. I don't know if they want to handle it differently. It's weird too. Again, part of all this is that they only have one joint training camp practice this year. And we've heard them talk about in the past how big of a deal these joint training camp practices are to them and how they're substitutes for preseason games. But when you only have not only just against one team, but again, one day, typically they get 2 days against, to see, it feels to me like they're going to play the starters more than not at all in the preseason at some point, just because, again, they're not doing that typical joint training camp practice. But also, I mean, if they're not going to be there like they haven't been in recent years, I can't say I'm going to be shocked.
Fair enough. Yeah, no, I think it makes it, you make a great point about the one open training camp practice. It feels like they're going to want to get them out there for maybe a series or 2 just to kind of get the feet wet, but I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of stars in that offense that don't really need to play, so we'll see. I always wrap up our interviews by asking if I'm missing somebody. Is there somebody standing out at practice that you've noticed that's not being talked about a lot? Is there a name, good or bad, that you want to mention before we go ahead and end?
Yeah, so I did a winners, losers, and I don't knows from training camp. That's up on Bleeding Green Nation for the full list, and a lot of names on there. I think 14 winners, 7 losers, 10 I don't knows. I think we hit on the big ones where, like, I'm think Isaiah Rodgers is really building his stock here. Jalen Carter, it's not a surprise that he looks incredible. We all know Jalen Carter is really good, but I've kind of been, as I've been doing my little media tour here, saying that I think he is, if not underrated, at least under-discussed. When we talk about the, what are the most relevant storylines for the 2024 Eagles? We talk about Jalen Hurts. We talk about Kellen Moore, Nick Sirianni, Vic Fangio, you name it, the cornerback battle. We don't talk about Jalen Carter and how big of a deal it could be that, he could take an even bigger step in year 2. And I think, again, this isn't hyperbole when I say this, be like a Aaron Donald level impact player. I think that's what you could realistically be looking at here. I think that deserves more discussion here. So, yeah, really excited to see Jalen Carter in year 2. The early returns in training camp have been eye-opening.
Every single training camp practice, I see tweets from you and others saying, Jalen Carter bullies Mekhi Becton, Jalen Carter into the backfield yet again. And so it's a great point there that I think we're all just assuming he's going to be good, but if he's great this year, that Eagle defense is going to be even better than I think even our wildest dreams could have imagined. So good stuff there. I read the Bleeding Green Nation article you mentioned. If you haven't checked that one out, check out all of Brandon's stuff. I'm sure you know by now. Brandon is the man in terms of training camp. At Brandon Lee Gowton on Twitter, Bleeding Green Nation. Brandon, we appreciate you coming on as always.
Absolutely.